I was my own worst critic in that moment. And everybody else was like trying to take care of me. It was a very, very interesting dynamic.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to TruthWorks, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change? I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and well, a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of TruthWorks. I'm here with my amazing podcast co-host, Patty McCord.
Hello there. I'm amazing.
You are. And we have a very special guest today who I'm just really excited to talk to because I feel like we have a lot in common with this person. Her name is Ginny Wood. She's a former Google executive, very successful Google executive. She's a writer. She's written a book called Wild
Courage couldn't
Yes.
drag me away. Okay,
Yes,
go on.
Patty and I keep singing that song every time we talk about your book, which is probably annoying, but we can't help it. You are a mom and you've trained over 40,000 people through your own career project. We are so excited to have you. And I know I didn't give everybody the full story. So why don't you give us the full story and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, definitely. It's so great to be here singing about wild courage. Love that. I am a former Harvard Business School researcher. I spent 18 years at Google, growing from entry level to executive. I founded one of the largest career programs in Google's 26-year history. And now I'm a speaker, author, facilitator, consultant to Fortune 500 companies, spreading insane amounts of wild courage throughout the world to help people go after what they want and get it.
So researcher, right, at Harvard.
Yeah.
Then 18 years at Google.
Yeah.
Were you like 12?
Yeah.
I started at 20. Those are my only two. That's my whole work history. So that was Harvard was 22 to 25. And then Google was ages 26 to 44.
Wow. I grew up a lot at Netflix as well. I think I started there when I was 28 and then left when I was 43, 44, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah. 14
Crazy.
years for me. Yeah.
But you were with Reed for 20 years.
Yeah, forever. We're still together.
I mean, these are good companies, these are good companies you want to stay at.
I used to tell people that I looked at like degrees, and every 4 years I would turn into a pumpkin and go somewhere else because I'd get bored. And I told Reed that when we were like 4 years in, and he's like, "Are you bored?" I'm like, "No, we're not. We're a different company again." So, I think it depends on where you're at, and that being a long time in one place means that you got to have a lot of experience across a lot of different dimensions. It doesn't mean you sat still in one place, because if you did, you'd be gone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at a company, like especially a tech company that's growing and innovating so damn quickly, right? Same with me. I spent years in sales. I spent years in strategy and operations at Google. I spent years in analytics roles. And then, of course, I had this passion project doing this, career development stuff, helping people with stakeholder management and influence skills and negotiation skills and networking skills. So I really felt like I was not bored a day in my life. And I would imagine it'd be very similar at Netflix, which is always evolving and growing and changing.
Totally.
And I read your characteristics of wild courage, and I want you to go through them. I was like, I've been called all of those. More than once. Did you?
Yeah, me too. But I want to talk about that a little bit. So you're a researcher, then you go to Google young, in your mid-20s, and then you spend a brilliant 18 years there. And then you're kind of, I guess, as you described, all over the business from sales and analytics. And then how do you land on this career thing?
Okay. So it kind of all started with this moment on the subway. So it's 2011. I'm riding the subway home from work in New York City. And about 20 feet away from me stands this really good looking guy, like gorgeous blue eyes, brown, thick, wavy hair, the whole works. And even though I want to talk to him, something holds me back. Like, what if he's a convicted felon? What if he's married? What if 100 people stare at me on this packed train? So I sit there, I do nothing as the train passes stop after stop after stop, and life passes me by. And then I make a deal with the universe. I say, if he gets off at my stop, 72nd Street, then I'll try to strike up a conversation with him. And if not, then that's the universe telling me it wasn't meant to be. So he gets off at the next stop after that, which was not my stop, 59th Street. And as he exits the train, this wave of wild courage washes over me, and I bolt off the train saying, forget the universe, I'm making my own meant to be. So I catch up with this stranger, I tap him on the shoulder, I say, excuse me, you're wearing gloves, so I can't tell if you're wearing a wedding ring. But in the event that you're not married, you were on my subway and I thought you were cute. Any chance I could give you my business card? And then as I wait forever for him to respond, and he doesn't.
Probably shocked. He probably peed his pants.
I was like, this was a terrible idea because he's not responding. And then finally he takes my card. We go out a week later. We get married 3 years later. We've now been married happily for 11 years with 2 kids, 7 and 9.
That needs to be a rom-com.
Yeah.
Well, the New York Times wrote a story about it and it went viral. They called the story Serendipity 1 Spreadsheet 0 because I, no joke, kept a dating spreadsheet of all of my upcoming first dates. And at some point, 5 dates in 24 hours was my like most efficient 24-hour period, should I say.
You had 5 dates in 24 hours?
Yes, we could talk about that
Good
too.
Lord.
Then you asked, like, how did this all come to be? The reason I said, oh, well, it all started on the subway is because that was the moment that I really started using wild courage as a habit. I started writing down goals and saying them out loud and achieving them, like getting my pilot's license or asking for what I wanted at work. And I kept getting promoted, ultimately being the COO of different divisions at Google and running other operational teams that sat between sales and engineering. So how did this career program start? When all this wild courage started working out for me and led to a bunch of success, people would come to me for mentorship. And they said, well, what helped you rise? What helped you get to this level at Google, starting at entry level? And I said, well, maybe I'll write down some tips on a piece of paper and lead a training about it. So I thought like 12 people would come. And 2,000 people came to this first training I led.
Wow.
And then it just kind of grew from there to be tens of thousands of people across nearly 100 countries. So
I don't want to skip what you just said that's as important, I think, as your other messages.
Sure.
Which is, if you want to figure out how to be successful, find somebody successful and ask them.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's such a simple thing to do that people, it's your first little wild courage step.
Yeah.
That I think gives you the baseline to keep going.
Yeah.
It starts with the little things and you just don't even realize it.
Yeah.
It's like, Jessica, you're a recruiter. Hey, Patty, I want to be a generalist, right? I want to be a business partner, right? Like, okay. And you're like, I can do it. I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah.
Well, I love what you said. Like it's sometimes the small things, right? My newsletter is called Big Small Things. Like these are things that are off, like the tools in wild courage are common sense. They're just rarely common practice. And let's say you're not a subway chaser, right? But my guess is there is something right now that you want. And if you think of whatever that is, whether it's a project or a relationship or a goal or a promotion, you know, there's oftentimes something sitting between you and that thing you want. And after coaching tens of thousands of, you know, executives, non-executives, Googlers, you know, artists, scientists, directly and indirectly, I realized that the common theme about what stands between what you want and what you get is oftentimes fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of the judgment of others.
Yeah.
And so wild courage is really just the process of feeling that fear and taking action anyway. And it's the set of tools that help you go after what you want and get it. But it doesn't mean you have to chase somebody off the subway. That action for you could be asking to be on a higher profile project at work because that might eventually lead to a promotion. It could be seeking a mentor, not just a sponsor. Patty, going back to what you said, like find someone who's really good at the thing, who's achieved the thing you want to achieve, and go ask how they did it. Mentors talk to you. Sponsors talk about you behind closed doors when decisions are getting made. They advocate for you. They say, hey, let's put her on the big project. Let's give her the promotion. Let's give her the raise, right? So it could be as simple as sitting next to your VP in a town hall meeting and walking out of the room together so you can chat a little bit about the content of the meeting. Like as simple, as tiny as that. If you're an entrepreneur, it could be as simple as going and asking one person for their business just to, try you out. You don't need an LLC. You don't need a fancy website. You don't need business cards. You don't even need a name. The wild courage, the tiny action could simply be sending one email, which by the way, these are hard to do and can be terrifying. I have all these follow-up emails to people asking if they want to bring me in as a keynote, asking if they want to buy books in bulk when Wild Courage, is now hitting the market. And it is so hard to send those emails.
I know.
It's like, it seems so simple, but that is wild courage. It's not just chasing someone off the subway.
What? Well, first of all, like, how do you push yourself? Because you're like, you kind of teeter on the edge.
100%.
You're like, God, I don't know. And then either you do it or you back down.
Okay, I'm going to share 2 things that come to mind on how you do it. What do you do to do that action that's really hard? Number 1, mindset. Number 2, timer. Number 3, growth. So mindset. Start the task. I'm going to use this as a very real example. I talked about this for my entire therapy appointment yesterday. Okay, so this is very top of mind. 300 or so people got an advanced copy of my book. They're all prospective, leaders with budgets who could either bring me in as a keynote or buy the book in bulk. About 200 of them, I've emailed them and I have said, hey, did you get the book? Did it arrive safely? Are you enjoying it? And by the way, here's, my keynote fee and here's what it would look like for me to come in and partner. Send about 200, thinking 100% are going to email me back within 24 hours with the check and they just need to know where to send it, right? As it turns out, it wasn't 100%. So it put me in a little bit of a, disappointed in myself or down on myself, or I feel like a failure, or nobody cares about my message, or no one's ever going to hire me, or tailspin of why did I leave Google to be a starving artist, right? This big lucrative executive role where I'm the breadwinner for my family. So mindset is, when I'm in that mindset, it is really hard for me to sit down at my computer and go, okay, we've got to write those other 100 and get them out no matter what. But when I get a win, when someone, this morning I got an email and I got this single sentence from someone, I'm obsessed with your book. It's changed my life. I've already taken action. I just asked for a new mentor this morning. That little email puts me in this mindset of success, of confidence, of this book is helping so many people, Jenny. You're adding value. You're not asking for too much by asking people to bring you in for a keynote speech or to buy the book in bulk. So mindset is number 1. Get yourself to do these things when you're already in a positive mindset versus a disappointed mindset. And that could be as simple as an email celebrating how, something great you've done. Number 2 is a timer. Set a timer for 90 minutes. Close your tabs, close your email. It's called the Pomodoro method. I did not make this up. And just say, I'm going to do this for the next 90 minutes. And that is timer. Number 3 is growth. It's the recognition that no matter what the outcome is, no matter whether you succeed or fail in this one task, the growth that comes out of it, the spine straightening and the skin thickening that will come out of sending those last 100 emails, because it will give me more confidence. It will make me more able to deal with failure. It will remind me that failure is just data. It will remind me that to double my successes, I should quadruple my failures, because those are the people that end up being successful long-term in life. Recognizing that no matter what happens with these 100 emails, there will be growth that comes out of it. So that's mindset, timer, and growth.
I like all 3, but I really like the timer because I feel like sometimes when I'm doing these things, I have my phone's dinging, the email's dinging, and then I'm focused on that. I really think getting clear-minded and focused on one thing.
I'm also thinking about sometimes for me, the getting smacked down is kind of encouragement too.
Oh, I love that. I mean, successful people work that way.
Well, at one point in my career, I did send an email that may have been a little over the top to the CEO. And I did hear through channels that he wasn't particularly impressed with my mouthing off.
Good for you, Patty.
But I was right. And it did scare me. I mean, I was early in my career and it scared the shit out of me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get fired. None of those things happen. And so, what it did was kind of steel me to figure out a workaround.
Well, yeah. I mean, I call that in the book being reckless, right? Reckless is the courage to take calculated risks, to err on the side of action and to, instead of analyzing the outcome of every possible decision, or like, how could the CEO respond? Like, it is that kind of stuff that actually long-term pays off, because better to take the risk and see what happens. And then like, you're at least probably seen as a future leader, because leaders need to be decisive. They need to have opinions. They need to call it how it is. And it sounds like you were calling it how it was. So long-term, that pays off.
I did avoid the elevator he was in for
Well, yeah,
a long
fair
time.
enough.
And then later on in my career, I was on a panel with him. And I said, you probably don't remember me, but he was like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember you. Somebody else was like, does anybody ever forget you? And I thought, God, sometimes.
No.
Like I don't
forget
even
you.
remember.
But-
But it's terrifying.
Terrifying.
And it's not that, you know, what I found, and tell me what you think, like sometimes it's not as terrifying to send it as it is to get the response. Either like, I heard from channels you're not, or nobody responded, right? So talk to me about, what do you call picking yourself up again? And
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is part of being reckless, right? Think fast and fearless. If you're on the fence, do it. And this was different. The content of the email was not maybe what the content of yours was, but I once sent an email intended for 6 people to 27,000 people. And it was totally unintelligible. It was someone giving positive feedback about the Own Your Career program, but it was a testimonial. And it was like, there were typos, and it was like that person's name, Titi Akinsami, was like in the subject line. And then like all this just like garbledy-gook after it, which my shorthand to my team that like, hey, Titi got promoted and she's so excited. And like, our program is like having such high impact. Nothing in the body of the email, just a 3-line subject line with her name. And then this like, what seemed like a garbledy-gook note. So how do you recover from that? I mean, you take a deep breath, right? You realize the spotlight effect. This is a social psychological principle. People aren't worried about your typo or your mistake when they're falling asleep at night, because they're worried about their own mistakes and their own typos. People are much more focused on themselves than on you. And so I got maybe, 50, 100 pings, emails back from that. People not saying, you fool, why did you make that mistake? 100% of those responses I got were people trying to take care of me. People saying, you're probably mortified right now, but nobody cares, Jenny. Like, we love the program. It's amazing. Like, if you're freaking out, don't. It's okay. And it was only people, I mean, this is also a testament to like how incredibly supportive Google is as a company and how there's a lot of psychological safety. But I was my own worst critic in that moment. And everybody else was like trying to take care of me. It was a very, very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. You're always so like hyped up, and nobody else is thinking about it like anywhere near to the way that you're thinking about it, right?
Because
like,
they're thinking about themselves, which is natural. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how the brain works.
Yeah, it's just human.
Yeah.
So you're at Google, you're doing this career program.
Yeah.
And thousands of people are joining, and people like the woman you mentioned in your email are getting promoted.
Sure.
And then what type of insights, patterns, what did you start to see with the people that wanted to learn about this, but then also, what really was working?
What stood out for me most was that, honestly, it goes back to fear, that was the common theme, that people were getting in their own way. And that, when someone wouldn't reach out to a customer, or someone wouldn't ask their boss for what they wanted, or, was scared to be called one of these, things that we might perceive as extra bold, it wasn't like lack of talent or skill or experience or money that stood in the way. And again, this is a top company, if not like one of the top companies in the world. And these are top performers, all got straight A's in school. It wasn't the lack of skill or talent or all those things that got in their way. It was them. It was them getting in their own way. And that's what I find to be such great news, because when fear is the blocker, when you are your own worst enemy, you have agency. If you're the problem, you're also the solution. So, when we muster the courage to push past the fear, again, whether we succeed or fail in any one given thing, like, we will never feel as joyful and as powerful as pushing past that to achieve the success on the other side. And really, what I discovered was everything sits on the other side of fear, because really smart, really talented people not getting what they wanted. And at the end of the day, they had agency to take action. And sometimes they did and they were successful. Sometimes they didn't and they were held back. Me too. I had plenty of times in my career where I didn't do something I should have, or, that would have benefited me because I was scared to be called, weird or selfish or obsessed or manipulative. And in reality, taking those bold actions would have benefited me, but it took me time to learn that.
Yeah.
So talk a little more about those words that you just
Sure.
used, because I think they're really important.
Yeah.
The weird and selfish and obsessed. You have 9 of them, right?
Yeah. So these are 9, I will admit it, eyebrow-raising traits that ultimately create the bars of an invisible cage that keeps us small. So those 9 words are weird, selfish, shameless, nosy, obsessed, manipulative, that's a spicy one, brutal, reckless, and bossy. And the encouragement through, and these are the 9 traits of wild courage. And yes, you want to use them in a sane and savvy way. That is critical. But I find that more people need to dial up these traits than there are people who need to dial them down. Yes, are there some people in the world who are actually classically selfish or actually classically manipulative? Sure. But if you think about 10 people, 20 people right now in your orbit that you've communicated with over email this week, chances are, I am guessing, you will think of many, many, many more who are plagued by imposter syndrome or not enough confidence or not enough boldness and who could benefit from dialing up these traits just a little bit. Then you could think of those 20 people, how many people really need to dial it down because they're just genuinely obnoxious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember a time when I felt severe imposter syndrome. And it was right when I was, and I had been at Netflix for a long time and I knew the company very well. And I knew the people at the table very well, but I was promoted to be the CHRO. And it was my first meeting and we were having dinner.
Yeah.
And it
was
was
just a small job, Jessica, just a small little job.
really small. And
no power or responsibility.
No.
or expectations.
No, none. And it was pressure free for sure.
Yeah, right.
And I was the only woman at the table at that time. And I remember trying to jump in the conversation. And I was new to the team, right? I mean, we knew each other and we'd worked with each other, but I hadn't been on the same team with them. And they had a dialogue and a, rhythm or whatever. And I was trying to jump in and I was trying to jump in and I was trying to jump in. And I just gave up because I was like, I can't get a fucking word in edgewise. And I was really trying. It wasn't like I wasn't trying, but they didn't hear me. And I was like, did you guys think of it? No. Okay. I didn't think about that. Okay. I'll just sit back and drink my wine. That's better. But then I remember I got in the car to go home and I started crying. And I was like, oh, I've failed. I've failed myself. I failed all the women in the world because here I am, the only woman, and I gave up. And I let them just run all over me. And so then I guess I did have wild courage after that because I was like, all right, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Right.
And so then I would be like, I'm talking,
Yeah. So how did it work? This is an amazing story. I had the hair on my arms raised twice during that story when you were crying in the car and also when you're like, I just gave up, because we've all been there, right? Like it is a very, very tempting thing to do and a very normal thing to feel. So when you started doing it the other way, saying like, I'm talking, what happened? What was the response then?
They
How did
listened.
that go? Okay.
They listened. And, I mean, did they agree with everything I ever said? No, but at least they listened and they heard me. I just kind of got out of my own way, if you will. And was like, I am there for a reason. I deserve to be there.
Yeah.
They have voted me to be there.
My lesson from this was when I left the corporate world and I was, on my own, spending more time with my family. I and being on podcasts like this, I realized how much I interrupt people. And because I would say, excuse me, I'm same as you, right? I'm talking. And I would talk louder and on top of people just so that I would get heard. And what I learned by doing that was teaching other people, and this is probably part of what you teach too, is like, you got to make people be brave, right? You got to say, Jessica, do you have anything to say or not? Right. Or, so it's like I had to learn how to turn what I perceived as my bad behavior. I mean, bossy, and, to realize that, well, that's probably not a bad trait when you're actually the boss.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, people call me bossy, but yeah, call me bossy. I'm the boss.
Exactly. Like, I have these socks that my kids got me that say, I'm not bossy, I'm the boss.
Yeah, right.
But in this case, I want to encourage people to be bossy with this reclaimed definition. The definition being the courage to listen and lead. But bossy is really about steering others to success, because all these other 9 traits come together and they essentially create a leader. So cultivate partners, collaborators, allies, help them aggressively, push them mercilessly, win their gratitude, and achieve amazing things together.
Yeah.
Right.
Michael Jordan, he was not an easy captain of the team. He was not an easy person to have as a teammate, but he pushed his team mercilessly. He needled them. They found it tough to, be a teammate of his, but ultimately he made them champions and they were eternally grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's talk about that for a second. How this works with teams and and then, you've been part of amazing teams. Patty and I have been part of amazing teams. And those are the times when you look back in your career and you're like, wow, even if it was hard and even if you had some tension and friction, but you accomplished like you're getting a ring, in the NBA finals.
Right.
Like, you don't mind the pain so much.
Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about this week because there are about 40 people working on this book launch, right? It's a big book for Penguin Random House. It's, they're slating it to be one of their biggest professional development books of 2025. Huge honor. Super.
Go Jenny. Go Jenny.
Talk about the imposter syndrome and the pressure and the insecurities around that. Separate conversation. And when I do things, I like to do them really, really, really well. So, I kind of tap into my obsessed, which is the courage to set your own standard. It's about pushing, performing, and persisting and recognizing that none of these traits will serve you if you don't have the goods to deliver, right? Not for some company, but for your own ambitions. And my ambitions tend to be very, very high. And I like a really good product and I like high execution. So we've got 40 people working on the book. And there are a couple of designers who are working on the book. And I am pushing them really, really hard. And so when we think about how this works in a team dynamic, I think the question is, how do you balance that high execution, phenomenal work product, being the boss and being bossy and asking for what you want in a very direct way, but also supporting the team with psychological safety, with gratitude, with accolades, with praising publicly, right? So this person who I just feel like I am crushing her with all of these design change requests, it's a number of things. It's like some stuff for basically book marketing stuff.
Yeah.
And all these different assets. And so it's a lot of iterations. And then someone else on the team said, hey, Jenny, she's working so hard. Could you just send her a quick note telling her how much you value her? And what a great gift that person alerted me of the opportunity to just share gratitude. So 2 days ago, I sent her a note. It said, you are crushing this. I am so incredibly grateful for the heart you put into it. I had 3 bullets. This stands out: your flexibility, your design skills, and your energy, or something like that. And I just went into one sentence on each of them, CC'd her boss and her boss's boss, which someone gave me the email addresses for. And, she wrote back and she's like, I have never worked harder on any book campaign in my entire career than this one. And I've never experienced more joy doing so.
Aww.
And that to me, that is the tension you want, right? You want to push people and you want to show you're grateful. You want to celebrate them. You want them to feel good. And I think that when you have that latter element, you can push them pretty far because people have pride in their work. People want to get it right. People are okay doing different iterations as long as they're feeling valued.
We're going to roll into career confessions.
Let's do it.
It says, I feel stuck in my career and don't know how to move forward. I've been at the same job for a few years now. And while I've gained experience, I don't feel like I'm growing. I want to take on more leadership opportunities, but I'm not sure where to start. I've tried networking and taking on extra responsibilities, but nothing seems to get me noticed. I'm starting to lose my confidence in my ability to move up. What can I do to break out of this rut and make progress in my career? Well, I do feel like this is the best question for you.
Yeah.
It's classic.
It takes a whole book to answer it, though.
Yeah.
Read Wild Courage first.
Uh-huh.
Step one. Step two, one word that stood out to me in the confession was to move ahead or to advance. And I have found that oftentimes lateral moves have been the most long-term advancing for me of anything I've done. And when you mentioned the interrupting anecdote, Patty, I said, I have a story about interrupting too. It ties in perfectly here. I did a lateral move, no more pay, no more responsibility, no fancier title, moved from a completely different team in New York to one in Boulder, Colorado, where I am now. But it was all new peers, all new products, all new processes, all new regions. And I was floundering. I was struggling and I wasn't doing well. And a peer came to me and she said, Jenny, can I give you some feedback? And I said, sure, I love feedback. She said, Jenny, you've been interrupting people. And that's because there was a totally different vibe in this new team. It was much more introverted, much more thinking to speak than speaking to think. It was a quieter kind of just like culture than the really boisterous sales floor in New York City that was always like,
you're in New York too.
I'm
Hey,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let's get some deals done, baby.
Right, yay.
And here I am in a much more like engineering-y, heavy kind of vibe. And so the reason I mentioned that for this particular person's situation is because I also felt stuck. Like, I want a promotion. I want to get ahead. I want to make more money. I want a better title. And then here I make this lateral move that gives me none of those things. And I have to say that moment that I never would have gotten feedback on had I not taken the risk to take this lateral move, that set me up for so much more success. And do I never interrupt people? No, of course, I'm a human. There's a normal ebb and flow to any conversation, but I probably interrupt about 40% less because I did this lateral move and was in this totally new environment where I was evaluated freshly for the first time and I could reinvent myself. And so I might offer the mindset of like, think lateral to get ahead eventually, as opposed to thinking about getting ahead right now.
Yeah.
Great advice.
That's great advice.
Yep.
And, I think, again, I would encourage this person to read your book and have a little bit of wild courage and think about just like the little things, like you were saying, like sit next to the VP at the all hands and walk out with them and say that, that part of that meeting was really interested. I'm also interested in those things,
Exactly.
if you ever need someone to be on that team.
Oh, yes.
Just stuff like that. I think.
Yeah. Share your power assets, the 3 things that drive you, your talents, right? They make up your power portfolio. Mine are stakeholder management, influencing others, and building things from startup to scale, right? So like, do you know those? I would ask this person. When was the last time you told your boss, and more importantly, your boss's boss, what you're excited about, what you want to learn more about, what projects you can participate in? Like, even if it's not a promotion right now, it's about getting on those key projects that will ultimately get you in the rooms with the right people. And do people know your talents and skills? And are you explicit about it?
Yeah. And I think to listen to the voice in your head that says you can't because to actually, you got lucky because somebody stood up and gave you the feedback. But you can also say, when the voice in your head says you can't because, you could ask somebody, is it because? Right. And it might be an invitation for them to give you the feedback. No, it's not that. It's just like, you're kind of a loudmouth. I that's feedback I've gotten my whole career, but it's been really helpful. I've had people say to me, just be quiet sometimes.
If people want to buy the book and want to book you for speaking, I know you do speaking and coaching, where can they find you?
Yeah, so books available anywhere books are sold. Fun fact, buying the hardcover helps the success of the book the most. So if you're indifferent to digital versus paper, not the best thing to say for the environment, but if you want to help the success of the book, the hardcover actually is the most helpful. That's what counts for New York Times bestseller lists, etc.
Buy the hardcover.
Buy the hardcover. That's my shameless, with no shame at all, a plug. And then,
see her having wild courage, telling you to buy the hardcover.
Yeah, I bet no one has ever said that on your podcast.
No.
Like, don't just buy the book, buy it this way.
I love it.
And then itsjennywood.com is where you can find me for speaking or coaching or consulting. And then I have a free gift for anybody. It's jennywood.com/get promoted. That is a free 8 tips and tricks guide, scripts, and all sorts of strategies. I've got a spreadsheet in there. You can literally copy and paste and just copy my homework and use with your boss. It's a shocker.
I knew you had a spreadsheet. But listen, you can get a free spreadsheet and get promoted.
No, it's super cool. It has all these like leadership capabilities like teamwork, influence, decision making. And then you rate yourself red, yellow, green. A year ago, you rate yourself red, yellow, green now. And it basically convinces your boss that there's been a delta on all these leadership capabilities and that you're improving and you're ready to get promoted. So it just like visualizes it for your boss in a really cool way.
Jenny, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny.
What a joy. So fun.
Thanks for listening to TruthWorks. This episode was produced by Megan Hayward. Thank you to Kathleen Speckert and the whole Edit Audio team.